I was riding my bike. I often I make stops. I rest, and by the way, I ride bike like 20 miles every other day, and I take a break and look at these beautiful, enjoy the sceneries, and looking at these cool looking buildings, these architectures. They look pretty cool, you know. Uh, this is this appears to be one of the IUPUI facilities. Either it's library or school or somewhere or something. I look at these buildings and oh, that looks good. And then I wondered what's gonna happen to these buildings when the trouble comes, when the great tribulation comes. The places where it's not gonna get affected by the nuclear attack. Um, how are these buildings will remain? I made assumption. I was talking to myself, and apparently Jesus was listening. He was listening because he sees my thoughts inside out. I was wondering to myself, I'm sure these buildings, even though this place is not gonna get nuked, I'm sure that these buildings will remain throughout the tribulation. Even though it's gonna be very bad. Because these buildings they look valuable. You can reuse them. Because the system will go down. The government system will go down. And but I'm sure that people in the future will make good use of these buildings because you can use them as a shelter, like a building for people to a place for people to stay, to live, or just use it as a shelter or even hospital, something like that. You know, there are a lot of cool large buildings like this. And Jesus stepped in right away and he said no. He said no. These buildings will not remain. He said that it's gonna collapse. It's gonna it's gonna tear down to the ground. Um, they will not be reused. Jesus was pointing out to me not just this particular building. He wasn't talking about just this building. Any buildings, any largely funded, government funded, under government system, big buildings, like school, education system, universities, um, um, facilities that will be torn down. They will crumble, they will be torn down to the ground from the earthquakes. Even places where it's not going to be directly affected by, like Madrid fault lines or San Andreas or any other fault lines, or any place where nearby volcano areas, the earthquake will be so strong because God will be shaking the earth so hard, so much, so intensely that all these buildings will crush to the ground. They will collapse. They will not be able to withstand from the super earthquakes, and it will be God's doing. And it is God's intention. He told me that. Jesus told me that these will all come down physically, not just systematically, spiritually, but physically. These buildings, structures will be crushed. And I was awed by that. Man, what that's a lot of waste. I told Jesus that's a you can reuse them for good things, but he says no. It's gonna get all reset. The world will go through reset by God. Even these buildings, by the way, they look beautiful. Look at the scenery. Look at the area. I ride bike here every other day. I ride through these areas, these waterways, and these are apartments, and they're very expensive, very luxurious. And I asked Jesus, what about these apartments? I mean, after all, they're shelter, they're apartments, people's homes. He said, he cringed his face with sad look, and he said, no, these buildings will come down too. They will collapse. These apartments will be no more. Oh man, that's gonna be catastrophic for everybody. We're not dealing with normal circumstances that the world has seen. It will be so huge, so apocalyptic. It will change everything. It will change the whole world. These apartments will collapse. Jesus told me that. There are a bunch of nice areas. They got nice house divisions, apartments, condos. I don't know. I don't know if all of them will collapse. But what Jesus showed to me, like buildings like these here, these luxury apartments, will get crushed from the earthquakes. A lot of buildings will collapse. Jesus told me that. Even this one here, any large buildings will collapse. They will be demolished. Libraries, schools, any buildings that God once destroyed will get destroyed. Earthquakes will be so strong. These here, all this building, Jesus guided me. He showed me what picture to take, what buildings that he wanted me to take picture on. And these are examples. All this will be crushed to the ground. Only thing that's not gonna get crushed, Jesus told me, only thing that's not gonna get crushed is your own shelter. People that are living for God, people that are living with God, following Him, the remnants in the end times, in the later part of the tribulation. Those that will remain, those that will live on this earth, their shelter will be protected supernaturally so that they will be unaffected by the earthquake. God can do many things, miracle things, in supernatural ways. So while these big, tough buildings collapse, watching them collapse, but your shelter will be unaffected. All these buildings here. This one too. This is a museum. Look at that. This is a cool looking building. All that is going to be crushed to the ground. Nothing will be left. Man, it's a really beautiful. It looks good, but unfortunately all this will come to an end. Not just people, not just evil of this world, but physically speaking, Jesus told me physical buildings will be crushed. That's the message he wanted me to share. Look at that. All that will be no more. And therefore Jesus told me, he told me, he gave me understanding, and he told me that don't tell people, don't expect the world to come back to normal after the tribulation. That is the message. Those that are seeking, those that are self-seeking, those that are planning for their future, they want to go to school, college, universities, to get educated, to get their graduation, so they can have a nice job. Those things will be no more. Jesus told me, don't bother. Forget those plans, because you will not be able to accomplish because of what is coming. All these buildings will be crumbled to the ground. You're not going to be able to go to college. Not the way of the world system, because the world system will be crushed. Jesus says that people will be solely dependent on God, on Him, on Jesus. Follow His guidance, because He's the one that will give you knowledge. He's the one who will give you the knowledge, the ways, the better ways to live life, better life for God's will, His way. And God gives you knowledge that is far better than what this world is right now. It will be beyond science. People here on this earth, in this world, they haven't even really discovered the full spectrum, the full depth of science. Jesus told me that. Nowhere close. They haven't even really experienced the real science, and they don't know the truth, and God will reveal to them. God will reveal to us more in depth the true science, and even beyond. That's the knowledge that God will give you, and you will lack nothing. So He says, don't bother planning for going to college after the tribulation, because it's not going to happen that way. It's going to be very different world, because everybody that remains on earth, the survivors, will be so connected to God, living with God. They will live with God here on earth. Everything will be taken care of. They will do what God instructs them to do, whether it is work or anything. How to live their life. You would not need to worry about security. You will not need to worry about making bunch of money like the way this world operates. It will be totally different. That is the message Jesus wanted me to deliver. So our mindset will have to change completely. Our current mindset, I'm talking the people of the general public, our mindset of this world is totally different than what God wants. It is nowhere close. And this is not the way, Jesus says. The real way is to live God's ways. So we gotta change our mindset. And all that will happen as we go through tribulation. As people go through tribulation, their spirit will grow in God and they will learn things from Him. And they will become great servants for God's kingdom. All right. Jesus bless you.